vibe coding is going to change the entire industry. We've been mostly vibe coding property deals, and the amount that has grown over the past 6 months is absolutely insane. And I remember speaking to developers and them saying like, vibe coding is never going to reach a level of a developer, but it's getting closer to that point where instead of you need to develop and then every once in a while you can check in with AI and have it fix something, it's the other way around where AI does almost everything. And there's just a few bug fixes that you need to go and understand how to solve. And eventually it's going to be completely transformational in a way where AI is going to do everything. So what are the key things and key skills that will make you good at vibe coding? And it's not knowing the actual code language, although that does help because being able to read it and review it and seeing especially the small bug fixes, because it's very, very good at doing a lot of things and doing things that are focused. It's not as good at picking up on small bugs that need to be fixed. So the first thing is just a talent that sometimes people are just born with and people aren't, but is one you can always improve upon. And it's a level of patience, and an amazing level of patience, because there are times where you're just gonna go flying, and that will set your expectations of, oh, okay, I can just fly through this. And then there are times where, again, you'll run into these small, seemingly tiny bugs, but for God knows why, the AI cannot, for its life, debug it and fix it and diagnose the issue. So those are the times where if you don't know how to code, you're kind of stuck going back and forth, chat, Claude, Cursor, whatever you're using, and figuring out the true problem. The thing is, if you understand the logic behind things, like for example, I was having a problem with a form hydrating. So basically the back end was working perfectly. The front end was talking to the back end properly, but it wasn't displaying. And I looked at everything, but the only thing I didn't look at was the submit button and how the submit button affected the field. And that's where the problem lied. And AI it wasn't ever gonna touch that. I spent embarrassingly long on that problem. So just understand that there's a certain level of patience that you're gonna need and a certain level of understanding of code if you wanna do it successfully. And I mean, as time goes on, that level of code is gonna go lower, but that level of patience will always be there, because there'll always be something that it doesn't know how to do, or it's still working, or it's still getting better at, because it's still gonna take a bit of time before it's like genuinely amazing with zero flaws. The next thing kind of tied to that understanding of code is understanding of logic, both logic and creativity, because creativity is what allows you to imagine what you want and being able to communicate that. So I guess it's three things: creativity, communication, and logic. The creativity allows you to imagine what you want it to look like. And this is honestly a deal breaker. If you don't have this, you're not gonna be able to vibe code, because you can't imagine what you want it to do, so you can't explain it. The other thing that goes along with that is the communication. So you not only need to have an idea of what you want to build, but you need to understand how to write it. This is where like prompting comes along. How to write it in a way that the AI actually understands. And oftentimes that's connected with understanding or having a history of like web development, which thank God I have, because if you want to have some sort of UI do a certain thing, you need to know, okay, this is called a nav bar. And that's like the most simple thing. So if you don't know what a nav bar is, if you don't know what a component, what a div, any of these things are, this is something you actually want to research first and learn about, and just to get a background knowledge. You don't need to go in depth and understand how everything plays together and how to actually write the code out, although that does help. But understanding it and then having that background to be able to communicate your creative, imaginative thoughts of what you want the AI to build is going to be crucial. And the last thing is the understanding of how code works and how computers think, really, because they don't think like you and I. We have a lot of neural processors. They have a lot of neural processors in a different way, but it's very logical in how things go about. So you need to understand the steps of what something needs to take for an action or an output to happen, and then in what scenarios that happen. So like if statements, if you ever heard of if statements. If you haven't, again, that's something you should probably understand before tackling any big projects. And I'm not talking about these small projects where you do like 2 prompts and it's done. It's really when you're trying to go in depth and build a real product. And understanding that logic of that thought process. Okay, this is how the computer thinks, similarly to how AI thinks, where it goes very step by step and sequential. And then also it kind of like branches out of, if this happens, that's what happens. If this happens, that's what happens. If you don't understand that, and there's more to it, that is something you should really prioritize before jumping into it. And let me just add a little bonus here at the end. One of the biggest things is kind of connected. Just do something like some side project first, because there are so many things you're not going to know until you do it. Like a super small thing. Like I wanted to play around with themes because I was just having fun with it. I wanted to have like a break of the code, but I didn't want to have a break from the code. So I was playing around with themes, and I realized all the colors needed to change because they need to be tokenized. And the way to make themes is to have basically like a label, like this is regular text or a small text. Now that you can change the color based on the theme, and then you just have one file for that, versus everywhere has the color, and then you need to go around and actually remove that and change it. So that's like a small example of something where you're never gonna realize that unless you've done it before. And there are a lot bigger things, like on the back end, on the like running the database. There's a lot of things where you want to have done it before and get that experience, because experience is invaluable, so that you can do it again. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. See you guys next time. Peace.